Hello. In our last video, well, we learned a number of things, but one of the things we learned was that if there is nothing in the else part of an if in Java, and this is very Java specific, but if there's nothing in the else part of that if, then we're allowed to omit the else and not have these braces here. And this is something that may actually get us in trouble if we're not careful in our thinking. So I want to show you what that looks like. So let's uh-oh. We're going to start a new page. We're hoping it wouldn't make a terrible bell. Okay, there we go. So let me show you a block of code, and I want you to think about what it does. So here's my code. It says if the robot's front is clear, then I'm going to ask the robot to move, and I'm going to write it this way. And if the robot's front is not clear, and I've written the spaces around the exclamation point for the moment so that this not will stand out at you, but normally I'll just write it like this. Okay, if the robot's front is not clear, we'll turn left. Okay, so that's the code, and I want to know what it does. And I'd like to compare that to something else I might have written instead, and that's this. If robot's front is clear, then move. Otherwise, turn left. So I want to know, do these two programs, do these two code segments, we might call it, do they do the same thing? Let's see, if the robot's front is clear, I'm going to move, and otherwise I turn left. When do I turn left? I turn left when the robot's front is not clear. And this says, if the front is clear, move. If the front is not clear, turn left. So, at first, these sound like they do exactly the same thing. When we look into it, when we really think about it, they seem like they do the same thing. And if you're thinking that they do the same thing, then you've fallen for one of the key pitfalls with ifs. In fact, I think this is the single hardest thing about working with conditional statements in any programming language, is this distinction here. So let's see, when might these two code segments do something different? When would they behave differently? In other words, here I either move or turn left. Here it looks like I'm either going to move or turn left. Can you think of any situation where this code might lead to both moving and turning left? Well, to move, the front has to be clear. To turn left, the front must not be clear. But if we move, if the front is clear and we move, so let's draw this out. If here's my robot, and let's mark exactly where the robot is on the map so we can keep track of this. So here's the robot. If the next cell is empty, if it's clear, and the next cell has a wall, so we'll put a, let's see, there's a wall over here, then things get interesting, because this program over here will do what? It'll say, well, the front is clear, so it will move. And it won't turn left, right? If the front is clear, it'll move, and no turning left happens. So in this case, the robot would end up here in this cell when I run the blue code on the right. If I run the yellow code here on the left, well, that says, if the robot's front is clear, move. Well, is the front clear? Yes, the front is clear. So the robot will move. So instead of being in this first cell, the robot will now be over here in the second cell. And then it says, separately, having completed that statement, now run this statement. If the robot's front is not clear. Well, the robot's front is not clear. So this program here is going to then turn left. So I think this really illustrates one of the trickiest things about ifs, and that's the difference between if-else and if-if. That they're not the same. They're sometimes the same, it depends on the situation. But if it's possible that the first if will result in a situation that could make the second if also fire. I like to think of this if fired, and in this scenario, both ifs fired. When I use that if construct, I should be using it because there are situations where I might want both ifs to fire. So when I have two alternatives, I should use the if-else. When I have several independent conditions, and I might want to handle each of those things independently, and therefore I might want more than one if to fire, I might use multiple ifs. One thing I think it might help to see is, remember, these ifs here are short for something, right? I left out the fact that there's really an else with nothing in it in both of these. And I think when I write those else's in, you can tell that this program is quite possibly not going to do the same thing as this program here. So we're going to be extremely careful. Anytime we start writing an if, we're going to think about, do I have alternative situations that I want to worry about, where I need to handle each of those alternatives? Or do I have several independent situations? And it may be a while before we see programs where we might deliberately want this if idea, but I think we'll see it many, many times in these videos as we start dealing with more and more complicated situations where we might test for more and more kinds of situations. So that concludes, well, I'm sure I may throw in some more if videos later, but for now that concludes our introduction to conditional statements. I'll see you in the next video.